The screams in the jungle. The jungle was not silent. It breathed. It hissed. It whispered. It watched. Jake was used to dangerous places. He was a human explorer on a strange alien planet called Gorath 7, filled with wild plants, huge insects, and creatures that could kill with one bite. Most people wouldn't dare enter this place. But Jake wasn't like most people. He walked carefully through the thick vines, his boots sinking into red mud. The air smelled like acid and flowers. It was hot. Too hot. But Jake had work to do. He was collecting samples for a research company back on Earth. Then he heard it, a scream, not an animal's, not like any sound he'd heard before. It was sharp, high, painful. Jake stopped walking. He listened. Another scream, closer this time. It sounded like someone was in trouble. Someone suffering. He looked around. The trees above blocked most of the sunlight. The jungle was thick and alive, full of danger. But the sound came again. Louder. A female voice crying in pain. Jake grabbed his machete and cut through the vines. He didn't care about the warnings the local settlers gave him. They had told him to never enter this part of the jungle. They called it the Red Maw. Too many had entered. Too few had returned. But he couldn't leave someone behind. After a few minutes of cutting through plants and ducking under strange hanging roots, he reached a small clearing. That's when he saw her. She wasn't human. A tall, thin alien woman lay trapped on the ground. Her skin was light blue, glowing faintly. Her silver-white hair was dirty and stuck to her face. She wore torn alien clothes, and her legs were caught in a sharp metal trap, spikes clamped around her ankle, blood pouring out. She screamed again. Jake rushed forward. "Hey, don't move! I'm here to help!" The alien girl flinched. Her glowing eyes widened. She looked scared of him. Jake held up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm a human. I want to help." She stared at him, then slowly nodded. Jake kneeled beside her. The trap was tight and brutal. It wasn't something nature made. It was a hunter's trap. Someone had set this to catch intelligent prey. Jake worked quickly. He used his tools to pry open the trap. It took all his strength, but finally, with a loud click, it released. The alien woman cried out in pain, but she was free. Jake pulled her gently away from the trap and checked her leg. "This is bad," he muttered, "but you'll live." She tried to speak, but the words didn't make sense. Her voice was musical, but her language was strange. Still, her eyes said what words couldn't. "Thank you." Jake gave her some water and wrapped her wound with bandages. She winced but didn't fight him. Just then, the jungle went silent. No wind, no birds, no insects. Jake froze. He looked around, alert. Something was watching them. Then he saw it. Yellow eyes in the trees. A creature, part machine, part beast, was crawling down the branches above. It had metal claws, glowing red skin, and sharp fangs. One of its legs clicked like a weapon, a hunter's beast. Jake pulled out his flare gun. "Get behind me," he shouted to the alien girl. The creature leapt from the tree, aiming to kill. Jake fired the flare. Boom! A burst of fire shot up. The creature screamed and ran back into the shadows, afraid of the sudden light. Jake stood still, breathing hard. His hands shook. He turned back to the alien girl. She was staring at him like she had seen a ghost. "You're okay now," he said, softly. "I've got you." She whispered a name. "Elira." Her voice weak. Jake smiled. "Elira?" "I'm Jake." The jungle behind them was still dangerous, but now neither of them was alone, and the real hunt was just beginning. The jungle never rested. Even after the flare scared away the metal beast, Jake knew it would return. Or something worse would. He sat beside Elira, checking the bandage on her wounded leg. The bleeding had slowed, but she was still weak. Her breathing was shaky. Her glowing blue skin was cold now and her eyes were half closed. Jake gave her more water and spoke gently. "We need to move. It's not safe here." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. She trusted him. Jake looked around. The vines above twisted like snakes. The air was heavy with the smell of smoke and blood. He had to find shelter. He picked up Elira, carefully avoiding her injured leg. She was lighter than he expected. Her head rested on his shoulder as he carried her through the dense jungle. Behind them, a soft rustle. Jake stopped. He turned his head. The leaves moved, but no wind. Something was following them. Something quiet. Careful. He kept walking. Faster now. His boots sank into thick mud, but he didn't stop. Every sound, every snapping twig made his heart pound harder. The jungle seemed alive, like it was breathing down his neck. Then he saw it. A clearing. Half covered in old stone ruins, maybe from an ancient alien village. One of the stone walls had collapsed, forming a small cave. Perfect. Jake gently placed Elira inside. "Stay here. Don't make a sound." She nodded slowly. Jake pulled out his small sensor tablet. He placed it outside the entrance and tapped the screen. Red dots appeared. One dot was far behind them. Another dot, right behind them, was moving. Closer. "Damn," Jake whispered. He picked up a broken stone, rubbed some mud on it, and threw it far into the trees. Crack. The sound echoed. Suddenly the jungle shook. The beast leapt forward, not toward Jake, but toward the sound. It was massive up close, a half-organic hunting creature. Its claws were metal, but its body was muscle and bone. A horrible fusion. Someone had made this thing for one purpose, to hunt and kill. The creature sniffed the air, confused. Jake crouched low, holding his breath. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." The creature looked straight at him. Its eyes glowed yellow. It stepped forward. Jake's fingers slowly reached into his pocket for the last flare. He needed to time it perfectly. One step closer. The beast opened its jaws. Jake pulled the flare and fired, point blank. Boom! The jungle lit up with red fire. The beast screamed, its face burning. It turned and ran, crashing through trees. Jake didn't wait. He ran back into the stone shelter, breathing hard. Elira looked at him, confused. He smiled weakly. Big teeth. Bad breath gone now. She gave a small laugh. Even in pain, she understood. Then she pointed at his arm. He was bleeding. A long scratch from the beast's claws. Jake looked at it and shrugged. "Better me than you." Elira reached into her bag, just a small piece of cloth with strange herbs. She crushed the herbs and pressed them into his wound. It stung. He flinched. She smiled. They sat in silence for a moment. Then she tapped her small translator stone. It flickered, broken, but managed to say a few words. "Hunt, me, kill, sport." Jake's eyes narrowed. "They were hunting you? For fun?" She nodded slowly. Jake clenched his fists. His voice was low and angry. "That's sick. Who would do that?" The translator flickered again. "Noble lords, rich, alien." Jake stood up. He paced the small cave, angry now. "So some rich alien bastards use your people like animals? Just for sport?" Elira looked down, ashamed. Jake knelt beside her. "Not anymore. You're not prey. Not with me." She looked at him. Her glowing eyes were full of surprise. No, one had said those words to her before. He gave her a small smile. "Tomorrow we move again. We'll find safety, and maybe your people." Outside, the jungle growled. But inside, in the dark shelter of broken stone, hope had begun to grow. The fire crackled softly inside the stone ruin. Jake sat with his back against the cold wall, cleaning his wound with water drops from his canteen. Elira lay beside him, resting, her head leaning against folded leaves he had shaped into a pillow. The jungle outside was still dark, But the real danger wasn't just the creatures lurking in the trees. It was what he had just learned. They had hunted her, like a game animal, not because she had done something wrong, but because her kind was considered good sport. Jake looked over at Elira again. Her breathing was shallow. Her eyes were half open, glowing softly in the firelight. She looked like a fallen star, hurt, dirty, but still shining. "How long were they chasing you?" he asked gently. She tapped her translator crystal again. The device was broken, but it flickered to life for a few words. 7 days, running, hiding, bleeding. Jake clenched his jaw. Elira continued, her voice faint, words slow. "They took my brother. I escaped. Trap caught me. Thought I'd die there." Jake took a deep breath. "No, not while I'm here." She looked at him carefully, as if trying to understand him. "Why? Why help me?" Jake shrugged. "Because no one else did." There was a pause. Then slowly she said, "You, not like others." Jake chuckled. "You haven't met many humans, have you?" Elira shook her head. "Only those who pay the hunters." His smile disappeared. She wasn't just being hunted. Her people, her entire tribe, were being sold to the highest bidder for entertainment. The nobles of the inner systems paid to come to Gorath 7 to hunt Elira's kind. It wasn't survival. It wasn't war. It was a cruel game. Suddenly she sat up, grabbing Jake's arm. Her eyes went wide, afraid. "They have machines. They track sound, heat. We stay. They find us." Jake nodded. "Then we move." He stood and helped her to her feet. She leaned on him, wincing with every step. Her leg was better than before, but still weak. He made a crutch from a branch and some cloth. Elira looked at it, confused. "It's human tech," Jake joked. They moved quietly through the jungle, following a narrow river. Jake had scanned the area before and remembered a cliff edge nearby. If they reached it, they could watch for drones and maybe find a path to safety. But the jungle was not quiet anymore. There was a new sound, a low hum. Artificial, mechanical. Jake looked up. Drone, Elira froze in panic. "Down," Jake whispered, pulling her beneath a thick fern. The drone passed above them, its red light scanning. Then it stopped. It turned. It had seen something. Jake grabbed a rock and threw it into the opposite direction. The drone's scanner followed the noise. Then, with a soft whir, it flew away. Jake exhaled. "That was too close," Elira whispered. "They are coming." They moved faster now, deeper into the jungle, pushing past razor-leafed plants and strange glowing vines. Finally, they reached a tall ridge. Below them, the land opened up. Jake saw what he feared most, a hunting camp. Alien ships were parked near a large metal dome, cages, weapons, trophies. Through binoculars he saw them, other aliens in chains, beaten, starving. Some looked like Elira. She covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. "My people." Jake handed her the binoculars. "We'll get them back, I promise." She looked at him in shock. "You would fight for us?" Jake's eyes were sharp. "I don't like bullies, especially ones with ships and money." He turned back to the camp. "We'll need a plan." Elira stared at him. She had run for days. She had cried, bled, screamed, and no one came. But now, a strange human had appeared, not to hunt her, but to stand beside her. The sun on Gorath 7 never truly shone. It only glowed through the thick green fog that floated over the jungle. By the time Jake and Elira reached the next valley, the light was dim and the air was heavier. Jake's breathing was slower now. Not from exhaustion, but caution. This part of the jungle felt wrong. Even the wind refused to blow here. Elira leaned on the crutch Jake had made. Her injured leg still burned, but she said nothing. She was stronger now. Her eyes were alert again. There was no time to rest. The hunters would return, and they were getting closer. But the real danger wasn't just the hunters. Jake noticed it first, a tree that seemed to whisper, then a plant that pulsed like a heartbeat. This part of the jungle, Jake said, narrowing his eyes. It feels alive. Elira nodded slowly. My people call it the Green Tomb. Few enter. Fewer leave. Jake kept his knife out as they moved between twisted vines and glowing roots. Every step felt like a test. The ground was soft, but not from water, from decay. Dead animals. Bones. Rotten gear. Then, without warning, the ground moved. Elira screamed as she sank into a hidden pit. Quickroot vines grabbed her legs. Hold on! Jake shouted, diving forward. He stabbed the vines with his blade, cutting through their slimy grip. The jungle fought back. More vines tried to grab his arms, his neck. Jake bit down and struck with his knife again and again. He pulled Elira free just in time, both of them falling backward into the dirt. She coughed hard. Thank you. Jake stood, helping her up. We need to be faster. Smarter. This place wants to eat us. They kept moving, slower now, avoiding, glowing plants and roots that reached out like fingers. Jake threw a small rock at one strange flower. It exploded in red gas. That stuff's poison, he muttered. One breath could kill. As they climbed up a steep hill, something else appeared. A creature. It was thin, tall, with a head like a skull and black eyes that didn't blink. It moved without sound. Its arms dragged across the ground, fingers like needles. Elira whispered, Shadow Reaper. Jake froze. The creature sniffed the air. It hadn't seen them yet. They crouched low, hiding behind roots. Jake picked up a small reflective disc from his pocket. It was a flare mirror, a signal tool. He angled it just right to catch light from above and flash it toward a distant tree. The Reaper turned, then ran toward the flash. They moved the opposite way, breathing quietly, hearts pounding. At the top of the hill, they found a surprise. A cave. But this one was not natural. Alien symbols lined the entrance. Elira stared at it in shock. My tribe used this place, long ago. Inside, the walls were carved with history, stories of warriors, of hunts, of betrayals, and hidden in a corner, supplies. Jake found a small case and opened it. Inside, dried food, water, healing balm, and a weak plasma pistol. He held it up. Well, it's not much, but I'll take it. Elira touched one of the walls, tears forming in her eyes. My mother carved this. She said this cave would save me one day. Jake looked at her. I guess she was right. They rested for a short while. Elira applied the balm to her leg. Jake recharged the pistol with his battery pack. Suddenly, static buzzed through the cave. Jake's radio blinked. Someone was close. Scanning. A voice broke through the static. Target marked. Life forms detected near Sector E12. Moving to intercept. Jake's face turned hard. They found us. Elira stood, pain forgotten. Jake grabbed the pistol and his knife. They think we're weak. She touched his arm. Then let's show them we're not. They left the cave behind. Ahead was the final stretch before they could reach the cliffs, and maybe signal for help, or make a stand. Thoreau. Jungle had thrown poison, monsters, and death at them, but Jake was a human and Elira was no longer prey. The fog was thick as milk. Each breath Jake took tasted like dirt and smoke. The leaves above them shook with quiet movement, not from wind, but from watchers. Elira gripped the crutch tighter as they neared the cliff's edge. Down below, the jungle dropped into a deep valley filled with silver mist. The only way forward now was to either climb across or fight. Jake checked the old plasma pistol. It had only one charge left. One shot, he muttered. Elira looked at him. We don't run anymore, Jake nodded. Then, snap. A branch broke. Elira froze. Her eyes flicked to the trees. Another sound. A soft hum. A red laser dot appeared on Jake's chest. Down! He yelled. diving and pulling Elira to the ground. Zhuzhat! A plasma bolt shot past, burning a hole in the tree behind them. From the shadows, 3 armored aliens stepped out, tall, rich, confident. The lead one wore a red cape over dark battle armor. His voice was smooth, cruel. Well, well. Our little pet ran far. Jake stood up slowly, arms raised. She's not your pet. She's a person. The noble alien laughed. She's a target, and you, little Deathworlder, are in the way. Another hunter aimed a rifle at Elira. Hand her over, we'll even let you leave alive. A rare gift for a human. Jake's eyes narrowed. You'll have to kill me first. The red-caped alien smiled. Gladly. Jake threw a smoke grenade, his last one, onto the ground. White. Fog exploded everywhere. Gunshots rang out. Jake grabbed Elira and rolled down the slope beside them. Lasers fired through the smoke, missing them by inches. One hunter rushed forward, but Jake had prepared. He'd set a trap from spiked vines. Earlier, the hunter fell in, snap, screaming as sharp roots wrapped around his body. Elira grabbed a sharp stone and slashed the leg of another attacker who came too close. She may have been wounded, but she was still a warrior. The noble shouted in rage. Enough games! Aimed his plasma rifle at Jake. Jake jumped behind a tree and fired his only plasma shot. Direct hit. The noble's shoulder exploded in sparks. He dropped his weapon, screaming. Jake charged forward, tackling him to the ground. The alien snarled, drawing a blade, but Jake punched him hard again and again, until his armor cracked. Then, click. A new sound. Another hunter, hidden, had Elira in his grip, gun at her head. Drop it, human, the hunter growled. Or she dies. Jake froze. The noble coughed blood but smiled. You fight well, but it's over. Jake slowly dropped the pistol. The hunter pushed Elira to her knees. Jake's hands trembled. But then, Elira whispered something in her own language. The hunter blinked, confused. That was his last mistake. She spun quickly, grabbed his wrist and twisted it. The gun fired into the ground. She kneed him in the stomach, then bit into his neck, hard. He screamed, stumbled, and fell. Jake rushed to her side. Are you okay? Elira wiped blood from her mouth. I'm tired of running. Together, they stood over the wounded noble. Jake looked down. Call off the hunt. Tell the others, or we end this now. The noble groaned. You'll die for this? You think you're heroes? You're prey. Jake leaned in close. Wrong. We're survivors, and your hunt is over. With one kick, he destroyed the noble's comm device. Then they disappeared into the jungle, leaving the broken hunters behind. As the mist swallowed them again, Elira whispered, You saved me again. Jake looked at her, still breathing hard. You saved me too. They kept walking, not as prey, but as warriors now. The jungle slowly opened into silence. The trees weren't so tall here. The sky peeked through, soft and gray. The air felt lighter, peaceful, even after the chaos they'd just survived. Jake and Elira walked slowly now. Both were tired, blood on their clothes, smoke in their lungs. But something was pulling Elira forward, something deeper than fear. They were close. She stopped near a large stone covered in moss. Her hand touched the surface gently. Then she closed her eyes and whispered something in her native language. Jake watched. What is this place? She opened her eyes. A sign, the last mark before the home of my people. Jake looked around. They're nearby? She nodded. Then she called out, not in English, but in a soft alien chant. Nothing happened. Then, movement. From behind the trees, figures appeared. Not one, not two, a dozen. All blue-skinned like Elira. Some older, some young. Some scarred, others frayed. They wore leaves and old armor made from stone and metal scraps. Most carried spears. A few had old blasters. All of them pointed at Jake. A tall woman stepped forward. Her face was hard, her eyes sharp. She spoke in their language. Illyra replied, pointing to Jake. The woman frowned, stepped closer, and looked Jake up and down. Then she raised her hand and slapped him hard across the face. Jake stumbled back, surprised. The woman growled something at Illyra. Illyra responded fiercely. The air turned cold. Jake looked at Illyra. "What's going on?" "She is my aunt, the leader now. She thinks you are one of the hunters." Jake raised both hands. "I'm not. I saved her. I fought them. Ask her." Illyra turned and spoke again, faster, louder. Her aunt didn't believe it, until Illyra stepped forward and lifted her sleeve. The mark was there. A cut across her arm in the shape of her tribe's symbol. A life oath. A sacred promise. "She showed me this earlier," Jake whispered. Illyra looked her aunt in the eye. "I gave my oath. He saved me. He is not like the others. He is Deathworlder. He fought for me." Silence. The aunt stared at Jake. Then she lowered her weapon. "Come," she said in broken English. "We talk." They led Jake and Illyra into the hidden village, carved into the cliffs and trees. It was beautiful in its own way. Huts made of vines and bones, waterfalls spilling into glowing ponds, children hiding behind leaves, elders watching from the shadows. Jake had never seen anything like it. They brought him food, simple roots and cooked meat. They gave Illyra herbs for her wound. She sat with other women who cried and touched her face gently. She was home. Jake sat near the fire. The elder aunt approached and sat beside him. "You saved her," she said. "But why?" Jake took a breath. "Because no one else would. Because she didn't deserve what they did to her. None of you do." She watched him carefully. "You are human. From Earth, the world of monsters." Jake chuckled. "Yeah, that's what they call us." She tilted her head. "And yet, you did not act like one." Jake looked her in the eyes. "Where I come from, we protect people, especially those being hunted." The aunt was quiet. Then she stood and raised her hand high. She shouted words in her language. The tribe gathered. She pointed at Jake. "This human has the courage of fire. He helped our blood. He fought beside her." A boy asked, "Can he stay?" An elder added, "Can he teach us his ways?" Jake stood slowly. "I can help, but only if you let me." Then Illyra stepped beside him. She held his hand, looked into the crowd, and said, "I owe him my life, and now, my life is here." The tribe cheered, some smiled, some cried. Jake looked at Illyra, her eyes sparkled. "You found your people," he said. She nodded. "Yes, but I also found something else." He smiled. The jungle still held danger. The hunters weren't done. But now, they had hope, and they weren't alone anymore. The jungle of Goroth 7 had seen centuries of blood. But that morning the air was different. It wasn't just the birds or the distant rumble of thunder. It was something deeper. A storm was coming. Not a storm of rain, but of fire, rage, justice. And at the front of it stood a human named Jake. And an alien woman once hunted like an animal, Illyra. Jake stood before a small group of Illyra's people. Warriors, hunters, mothers, even a few scared teenagers who had never known life outside the jungle shadows. He looked at them all. "We're not just surviving anymore," he said. "We're taking our people back." Illyra nodded beside him. "The hunting camp has my brother. Others too. We wait no more." The elder aunt handed Jake a blade. Not a metal knife, but one carved from the fang of a beast. "You carry our honor now, Deathworlder." He accepted it without a word. They moved at dawn. Jake had studied the hunting camp when they'd escaped it days ago. Drones circled the air. Guard towers stood at the edges. Traps surrounded the cages. But he had something the hunters didn't. Human instinct. Human rage. And now, alien allies. They attacked in silence at first. Jake crawled under fences, cutting cables. Illyra and 2 others climbed trees, leaping silently onto the nearest tower and snapping necks before the guards could even scream. The power grid was next. Jake ripped open a control box and shoved in a spike charged with tribal energy. Crystals. Sparks flew, alarms blared, the lights across the camp flickered, then died. Perfect. Now the enemy was blind. From the center cage, a young alien boy looked up. "Illyra?" he whispered. She dropped down like a ghost. "Brother." She tore the lock off with a stolen guard's blaster and held him close. Others began cheering, crying, whispering thanks, but the celebration was short. "Intruders!" a voice shouted. Lights flared. Beams swept the trees, and the hunters came. Big ones, rich ones, wearing gold-plated armor and holding weapons that melted stone. Illyra handed her brother to a villager. "Go. Run east. Stay hidden." She turned to Jake. "You ready?" Jake cracked his knuckles. Born ready. The fight began like a storm. Fast, loud, messy. One noble raised his rifle, but Jake tackled him before he could fire. They wrestled in the dirt until Jake slammed the hunter's head into the ground. Another tried to shoot Illyra from behind. She spun, caught the laser bolt on a tribal shield, then hurled a spear straight into his chest. Blood splashed the trees. The villagers attacked next. They used ropes, claws, even broken cages to bring down their enemies. Mothers fought with the fury of pain. Elders fought with the wisdom of loss. It wasn't a war of equals, but it was a war of heart. And heart always fights hardest when it has nothing left to lose. Jake made his way to the command tent. Inside, the last noble stood, tall, rich, angry. "You don't belong here, human," he growled. Jake stepped forward. "Neither do you." The noble pulled out a double-bladed energy sword. "I've hunted your kind before. You all break." Jake smiled. "Then you've never met a real human." They fought. The sword hummed with deadly speed. Jake ducked, rolled, punched. He was faster, meaner. The noble slashed his leg. Jake screamed but didn't fall. He grabbed a firebomb from his belt and slammed it into the noble's chest. Boom! The tent exploded. Jake rolled out, coughing, his leg bleeding. The noble stumbled, out, armor burning, eyes wide in disbelief. How are you still alive?" Jake spat blood. "I'm from Earth." Then he charged and tackled the noble off the cliff. They both fell. When Jake woke, he was in pain, but alive. He lay on a rock shelf, halfway down the cliff. The noble was beside him, dead. Broken neck. Footsteps came. Illyra climbed down, eyes full of worry. "You're alive," he groaned. "Barely." She helped him up. "The camp is ours." They ran. "We won." Jake smiled weakly. "Told you. Not to bet against humans." Back at the village, they lit a fire in the center, not for cooking but for memory. Names of the lost were spoken. Tears were shed. Songs were sung in Illyra's native tongue. Then the elder aunt stood. She raised her hands. "This man, this death worlder, gave us back our people, our honor, our strength." The crowd cheered. Illyra walked to Jake. Before everyone, she took his hand, then placed a glowing band around his wrist. The life bond, the most sacred gift her people could offer. Jake looked confused. "What is this?" She smiled. "It means you are not alone anymore." He looked into her eyes. "You never were." Far away in the stars, other nobles would soon hear of what happened on Gorath 7. They would whisper of a wild human, a fierce girl, a tribe that rose from ashes, but none would dare return. Because deep in the jungle, under glowing leaves and eternal fog, the hunters had become the hunted, and one man had proved: humanity doesn't run,